Ichigo Kurosaki. Today we're gonna go over 10 different metas used to scale Bleach and address why these metas are probably not the best for scaling the characters in Bleach, and we'll also go over 7 different speed metas and as well as address why those metas aren't valid either. Then at the end of this video I'll give you an accurate scale for Ichigo in terms of AP, DC, and speed. Before going into the video, if you're a Bleach fan watching this, please try to keep an open mind and not be inclined to hate on my video before watching it, as just because a character is debunked from a perceived level of strength doesn't make them less impactful or iconic. And please be sure to like and subscribe and turn on the notification button so you never miss an upload. The first thing we're going to be going over is the Sokyoku meta. This meta basically asserts that Ichigo blocked the Sokyoku in the first arc of Bleach, with the same Sokyoku being stated to be capable of overwhelming everything in existence and has the power of a million Zanpakuto, which can destroy the Soul Society. The reason I disagree with this is because it's blatantly hyperbolic, as the Sokyoku was a thing being overwhelmed, so it contradicts the narrative that it can overwhelm literally everything in existence, which just proves that the statement in of itself is hyperbolic. Also, every part of this letter was proven to be full of lies. It's actually stated in the novels that Aizen lies for sport, so it's very likely that Aizen is lying about Toshiro in order to have Hinamori fight him. This is consistent because in the same statement that says Aizen lies for sport, it states that he doesn't say things without a purpose. We know that the letter was written directly for Hinamori, and Hinamori greatly admires Aizen, so it makes sense that she would believe whatever he says. And the thing supporting this is that Hinamori believed that Toshiro was going to steal the Sokyoku to destroy the Soul Society. Essentially, Aizen was trying to fool Hinamori into thinking that Toshiro was responsible for his death, which he actually faked. The Sokyoku was only made to extract the Hueco from Rukia. It's also stated that a bunch of events that seem to have no meaning go on to form a thread that outlines Aizen's plan, which is to execute Rukia in order to steal the Hueco. The letter to Hinamori fits that description perfectly, as it's very unlikely that Aizen wanted to kill them out of hatred. All this puts the validity of the statement about the Sokyoku into question, and the statement itself isn't even consistent with later feats, because it's stated to have the destructive power of a million Zanpakuto at full power, and it's multiplied tenfold. So a full powered Sokyoku has a destructive power of 10 million Zanpakuto, which is supposedly enough to destroy the entire Soul Society, which is the same size of Earth. This brings us to the debunk of the second meta: Bleach has a multiverse. People argue that the Bleach cosmology is comprised of a multiverse and realms such as the Soul Society or universes in of themselves, but the Soul Society is just planet level in size because it's stated to be parallel to the world of the living, and unless you can prove that there's life outside of Earth in Bleach, then the world of the living only refers to the Earth and not the universe. This isn't like Dragon Ball where the living world refers to the entire universe, since aliens live all around it and not just on Earth. Not to mention they're verbatim shown and stated to be planets and even described by the kanji Hoshi, which literally translates to celestial body. Even in the guides, we find out that they belong to the same universe, and it's stated that the Soul Society has a nighttime, and we also see that the Valley of Screams has enough gravity to pull them together. It's impossible for you to deduce that the Soul Society is universal in size given all these variables, since it makes no sense for it to be nighttime for a universal body, and gravity from something that small shouldn't even be able to affect it at all. So it's obvious that they're just both planets and not universes. This means that the full power of the Sokyoku supposedly has the destructive power of at least 10 to the 32 joules, which is planet level. Since this is 10 million Zanpakuto, we divide that by 10 and we get each Zanpakuto having the destructive power of 10 to the 31 joules. Yet in chapter 418, a transcendent Aizen implies that destroying a mountain is supposed to be impressive. Now this doesn't mean that he caps at mountain level, as attack potency and destructive capacity are two completely different things, but we're talking specifically about destructive capacity here, and 10 to the 31 joules is far above mountain level, reaching into the continental or multi-continental ranges. So there should have been no reason for this mountain statement to be made, since they should all literally scale millions of times above that in terms of destructive power. Even Yulkiora's destructive power is supposed to be impressive, and yet that isn't destroying continents, and all this is even assuming that it would be a planet level feat, because the statement destroy the Soul Society isn't even explained, and it never actually specified how it would be destroyed. And as I said earlier, the statement was proven to be a lie anyways, as Aizen explains the true purpose of the Sokyoku when he wasn't lying, as existing for the purpose of forcefully extracting Rukia's Hueco. So no, the Sokyoku is not planetary or universal in any way. The next meta we're gonna address is the Las Noches meta. This is one of the most popular metas used in Bleach. Many people argue that Las Noches is the size of a state or a small country based on the statement that it takes 3 days to walk across it, but Las Noches isn't actually that big. The statement of it taking 3 days to walk across it is contradicted by the fact that Ukiora is shown to be comparable to one of the pillars on top of the structure, which is comparable to Las Noches itself, which means it's not actually that large. If the intention was to make it as big as a state or a country, then they wouldn't make Ukiora comparable to it in any way, and this is regardless of whether or not pixel scaling is used. From what is shown, it can be deduced to just be a large building size structure and not actually that large. Even when you pixel scale it using every shot that the manga provides, it falls into a margin that is nowhere near what Nell proposed. If the intention was for it to be that large, then there wouldn't be a very consistent margin of visual errors that varies far below the supposedly intended size. Essentially, what I'm saying is that if the intention was to make it as big as the whole state, then there wouldn't be a consistent range of calcs for it falling way under 20 kilometers. In the same way, an author can make a visual error, they can make a narrative error. So the narrative is not infallible, but the supposed visual error here is consistent, which means that the intentions for Las Noches was not actually to be that big. So the 3-day statement becomes a narrative error that is contradicted by a consistent range of variables in the visuals. It's also stated and shown that the sky is fake. The curvature can just be a depiction of an aerial shot with an omnidirectional camera with a wider field of view, and doesn't necessarily equate to that being the actual curvature of the planet. People try to make the argument that Ichigo and the gang were walking for a long time and weren't getting any closer to Las Noches, supporting it being state level in size. However, it's stated in the guide and the manga that it confuses the sense of distance, hence why it appeared like they weren't getting any closer. Though even if you disregard everything I said and grant them this scaling, it would just be a country level feat, which isn't really that impressive at all. The next meta we're gonna address is the Hell multiverse meta. People argue that Ichigo in his Vasto Lorde form was able to blow up multiple layers of hell, making him universal to multiversal, but the kanji used can also just refer to worlds or realms and not literally universes. And something I'll explain more in detail later is the fact that there's only one universe in Bleach and nothing more, so everything else are just sub-realms that exist within the universe. Now hell indeed does exist in Bleach, but the Hellverse movie is just not canon. Kubo wanted his name removed from the DVD version after they gave him the title of executive director because he didn't do anything that warranted him being named an executive director. It simply wasn't his project and he only supervised it. As a matter of fact, there is no logical placement of the movie in the Bleach timeline. When the film took place, Ichigo and his gang were still storming Hueco Mundo. But again, if you disregard what I said and argue for the Hellverse movie being canon, which I'm literally not even against that motive because I literally love the Hellverse movie, how Ichigo is going about destroying this hell is not depicted in any way other than surface wiping and not planet busting. And even so, the explosions he makes are things that occur over a short time, and it's not like he can instantly obliterate the entirety of hell, because that isn't relatively implied at all. The next meta we're gonna address is the Gremmy galaxy level to universal meta. This meta stems from the fact that Gremmy is instantly able to materialize outer space, making him from the ranges of multi-galaxy to universal level, but Gremmy is not actually that strong. Let's assume that he did create a galaxy. That doesn't inherently scale his attack potency or destructive capacity in any way, because he created this so-called galaxy using his sacred letter, which is literally stated to be an ability, aka a hacks. Just because you create something doesn't inherently scale you to that said thing, as it can just be creation hacks. You would have to prove that there's a direct correlation between the amount of energy that a character expends and the amount of matter that is created. If an ability specifically allows you to divide anything in half, for example, and then you touch the planet and it divides the planet in half, that doesn't scale you to planet level. It just means your hacks helped you to divide a planet in half. It's verbatim stated that it's an ability that turns imagination into reality, so it's not something that correlates to AP in any way. Now I'll explain why this is not even a feat at all. Gremmy stated that he would use his strongest attack on Kenpachi, and yes, he was going all out as he needed another clone. Him going all out would only summon a meteor that would destroy the Serite, which is just a large building, which even Kenpachi says he's never sliced something as big as a meteor before, and needed to go into his Shikai in order to cut it. Even Renji and Asken were shocked by the meteor's level of power, with the same Asken being able to KO true Shikai Ichigo and fought with Bankai Urahara and Yoriichi too, which was stronger than even Shikai Zaraki. Even Jugrum was shocked by the scale of the attack and was even asking his subordinates to protect Yhwach from the attack, something he wouldn't need to do if Yhwach was above multi-galaxy level by scaling above Gremmy. The meteor feat at best is continental to multi-continental, and Gremmy's power doubles each time he summons a new clone. So how can someone whose best feat was multi-continental at best jump to multi-galaxy just by summoning 5 more clones? That makes no sense mathematically and logically speaking. Also, how did Kenpachi jump from just barely meteor level to multi-galaxy by basically doing nothing? To finish off this argument completely, Gremmy was killed because he imagined to be as strong as Kenpachi, who struggled with a multi-continental feat, which means Gremmy cannot be galaxy level or higher in any way. The next meta we're gonna address is the Valley of Screams meta. There's a pocket reality that exists between the Soul Society and the living world called the Valley of Screams, whose existence threatens to destroy the aforementioned realms. This pocket reality is destroyed by the Kido Cannon, which is seemingly powered by several dozen Shinigami. Firstly, the pocket reality is not that big at all. Having a blue sky doesn't necessarily mean it has a star, as there's things such as fake skies in Bleach, and it's stated that the Senna is at the center of this pocket reality, which doesn't make any sense because if it was an actual star, she would be inside of the star, since this presupposed planet would be orbiting a star, which would be the actual center. There's also a shot of the supposed planet, which it's shown curving and not too far from Senna's location, which is supposed to be at the center of the pocket reality, which means the size isn't even close to that of a moon. Even when Mayuri shows a hologram of it, it's shown to be a mountainous range and not actually a sphere. There's also multiple different shots with different curvatures, which further supports that it's not actually a planet, just a mountainous area with a fake sky. Even when the Kido Cannon is fired, we see that the sky itself is seemingly collapsed. We also see that some slime-like structure coming out of the sky, and we even see branches of a tree attaching itself to the sky in previous scenes, further supporting the fact that it's a fake sky. The weapon itself is called the Kido Cannon, and we see that the people powering it are members of the Kido Corps, so it's safe to assume that it has something to do with Kido. My theory is that it functions as a vessel for a Kido spell. What I mean by this is that since Kido requires large amounts of spiritual pressure to produce an effect, the Kido Cannon is a machine that casts a spell, but in order for that spell to be casted, it requires to be activated using a lot of spiritual pressure and incantations. And since it shoots an attack that destroys a pocket reality, we can deduce that it has a halo, which are offensive spells. In the mass databook, it's stated that the effectiveness of the spells depend on the user, and in this case, the user wouldn't be the Shinigami themselves if not the Kido Cannon. This means that the Kido Cannon produces an attack whose effectiveness exceeds the entirety of the Kido Corps. This meta doesn't work because you cannot prove that the pocket reality was going to be destroyed by just a massive spiritual pressure. The next meta we're going to address is a Yhwach uni to low multi meta. The world of Bleach was originally one universe, but the Soul King was sealed and his power was used to divide it into the living world, the Soul Society, and Hueco Mundo. This division created a massive traffic of souls through and from the Soul Society, and they used the Soul King to stabilize it, which essentially is regulating the travel of souls. The amount of souls in the Soul Society and the living world have to be at an equilibrium, or the lack of balance will cause both worlds to collapse due to the imbalance between life and death. If Yhwach was really trying to destroy all the realms with his spiritual pressure, it would directly contradict what he said at the end of his life, since without existence there wouldn't be any life or death, there would just be nothingness. It also wouldn't make any sense for him to fight Ichigo and everyone else, since the moment he defeated Ichigo, or right after he absorbed the Soul King, he could have just destroyed everything before they interfered. It makes far more sense for Yhwach's goal to be the undoing of the actions of the Soul King rather than destroying anything. The next meta we're gonna address is the Mukin and Hueco Mundo infinite meta. Mukin isn't actually infinite. It's stated that its vastness deludes you into thinking it's actually infinite, which by proxy implies that it isn't actually infinite in size, if it has to deceive someone that it is. Hueco Mundo isn't infinite either, as being stated to be an endless desert doesn't imply that it's infinite in size. Endless can just mean very great in context or perspective. Saying that endless means infinite in 2024 is a brain dead take. The next meta we're gonna address is the higher dimensional meta. Aizen simply uses something called a simile, as he states that as a two-dimensional being cannot interact with a three-dimensional one, then as long as he doesn't purposefully lower his level and allow interference, then neither humans nor Shinigami should be able to feel his Ryatsu. This does not imply he is higher higher dimensional at all. They could still perceive his existence, they just couldn't read his spiritual pressure anymore. The word dimension was used as a description for level or strength a few chapters prior to that, so it's just hyperbolically referring to how Ichigo was stronger than Aizen, to the point that Aizen can't even feel his spiritual pressure. Aizen could still see, interact, and attack him, which makes no sense for a higher dimensional being. By this logic, every random hollow transcends regular humans, which makes absolutely zero sense and is contradicted multiple times in this series. Aizen being stated to have transcendent power doesn't support this higher dimensional scaling at all, since it just says transcendent power and it doesn't specify how it's transcendent, so we can just deduce that it's in context of power being much greater, as transcendent doesn't automatically have to be referring to an increase in a dimensional sense. More so, Aizen destroying the Katosu that governs space-time doesn't support this either, because for one, just because something governs over another doesn't inherently mean that it would scale to or above it. Simply governing space-time doesn't imply that the Katosu scales to space-time or scales above space-time, as that would be a non sequitur argument. In the same way that just because a president governs over a nation doesn't imply that he's country level, so Aizen destroying it would scale absolutely nowhere quantifiable. Aizen stated that his ability has a torrent of gravity that distorts space-time, and some people argue this makes him universal. First of all, gravity is just a curvature of space-time, so technically it is a distortion in of itself. So he's basically saying that his ability is a torrent of distorted or curved space-time that distorts space-time, which makes no sense and is just tautology. It doesn't even matter, because even planets can distort space-time. Anything with mass literally can distort space-time. Even humans distort space-time. It's just way too insignificant to notice, so distorting space-time doesn't inherently put you at any cosmic tier. The next meta we're going to be addressing is the Yamamoto's Bankai meta. Yamamoto's Bankai was only evaporating the water of the Soul Society slowly, and the heat of Yamamoto's Bankai is not even as hot as lightning, which can heat the air around it up to 50,000 degrees, which is 5 times hotter than the surface of the sun, which is just 10,000 degrees. It was only resonating in the serite and causing your lips to crack and your throats to be dry. The serite being the smallest part of the Soul Society, with the biggest part being the Rukongai, having nothing being felt there. Not to mention it was happening slowly and over time, so it's not something that's instant or something he can spam. The best meta you can use that potentially gets Bleach characters to planet level is the fact that Senna's explosion is able to push apart the two worlds of the Soul Society and the living world, and they're able to return back to their original positions, which would be calculated around small planet level to small planet level plus, and the god tiers of the verse such as Yhwach should scale above this, as his plan was not only to remove the boundaries between the Soul Society and the living world being the Dangai, but also the boundaries that separated them from Hueco Mundo, which would upscale him to around planet level or small planet level plus. Now that we've gone over AP and DC, let's address the 7 different speed metas. The first one is the Ceros meta. Ceros being spiritual light doesn't make them light speed. Photons themselves are not spiritual in nature, so you cannot apply the speed of something existing in a physical reality to that of a spiritual composition simply because of the name. That would just be a nominal fallacy. And we know that Ceros are quite literally stated to just be concentrated beams of spiritual pressure or destructive beams, and not actual light, which could just be a description given to it due to its luminance and not its speed. If Ceros had a fixed speed at the speed of light, then it wouldn't make any sense as to why some Ceros can be scaled faster than the other. So it's pretty clear that Ceros are not actual light or light speed. In the second meta, pre-Dangai Ichigo was being impressed by something moving at 500 times the speed of sound. Some people try to argue that he was referring to the speed of his hand clapping. However, that makes no sense, as he said, "Did you hear that?" and not "Did you see that?" And the kanji used is referring to a sound arriving at a location rather than something being seen. So Mach 500 is impressive for pre-Dangai Ichigo. Even prior to the 500 times the speed of sound statement, Ichigo could react to Jin's attacks but couldn't even see his sword expanding, which is only 500 times the speed of sound. Even when he puts on his hollow mask, he's barely able to react to the attack from Jin, and then proceeded to get no diff off panel. And I don't want to hear any shit about multipliers, because the Bankai was never stated to be a 10 times amplifier to speed. Aizen couldn't even dodge an attack from the same Jin when he was right in front of him, so no, he wasn't even off guard. Some people make the argument that he's much faster than that because he told Aizen he was lying, and he usually tries to conceal his strength, but that doesn't prove that he's faster than that level by any substantial or quantifiable amount. It's even hyped up in the data books as being faster than the speed of sound, and some people argue that it was later stated to be a lie in another page. However, nothing in the scan even states states that or implies that at all. Now, even though it's stated to be faster than sound, that doesn't mean it caps there. The previous argument was that it was 500 times the speed of sound, so even if that's a lie, it still falls within the range of faster than sound speed, because nothing suggests that it's substantially beyond that. Even the high-speed movement technique utilized by hollows is called sonido, which is just a Spanish way to say sound. Now, I'm not saying this necessarily means that they are sound speed or around that because of the name only, as that would be a nominal fallacy, but it goes to show that Kubo's intentions was for sound tier speeds to be impressive in Bleach. The third meta in the novels is stated that Genjo dodged an attack much slower than lightning in the nick of time after Candace got pissed at Genjo and the others. She then uses an actual lightning speed attack against them back in the 1000-Year Blood War arc, and true Shikai Ichigo was shown to be able to react and block the same lightning from Candace, and this was Ichigo's best speed feat in the entire series. Since chapters later he's seen being pressed and tagged by characters relative to Candace in terms of speed, who we can only scale as fast as her Thunderbolt at the maximum. Ichigo was trying to stop Yhwach from invading the Soul Palace, so yes, he was going all out. Ichigo was able to react to the lightning, and it doesn't inherently make him faster than the lightning, but he still has around lightning timer level speed. Some people argue that Byakuya was already lightning speed, however in the guidebook it says it's like lightning and not actually moving that fast. So it's a simile, and it's just a hyperbolic expression of speed. It's just like saying his power is godlike, or etc. It doesn't inherently equate him to being said thing. The Nagashionn is not light speed. Nothing leads me to believe that it's light speed. Just because something is called light doesn't automatically mean it's traveling at light speed. If you're asserting that it's light speed because it's called light, then you would just be asserting that it follows the other properties of light, which the Nagashionn clearly doesn't, because it's a form of barrier that prevents the person inside and the person outside from interacting with each other. It also makes people float away and transports them to a different place, which regular light obviously cannot do. The Nagashionn is obviously only called light because it has the properties of luminance, and that's the only way it could be described, simply because that's the only thing it looks like, a beam of light. But that alone doesn't qualify it for being light speed, as it's only asserted to be light speed due to descriptions given to it, or descriptions that we get from the characters, and I already explained why their descriptions could simply stem from what it can only be described as, which is a beam of light. Another light speed scaling used for Bleach is through the use of X-axis, but I still have many issues with it. Firstly, Lily Barrow's so-called light really is just spiritual pressure, as it can be composed of actual physical photons. He becomes intangible when using his power, but photons are not actually intangible, as when you concentrate photons, they can cause actual effects to objects like burning. It's similar to the Ceros, which have been stated to be light but are actually just spiritual pressure. Matter of fact, they're most likely the same thing, as he just specializes in using said spiritual pressure in a different way. Like I said earlier, just because something is luminous doesn't mean it's moving at light speed. Lightning is extremely luminous, and it lights up the entire sky sometimes and makes it look like it's day when it's actually night, but it's not actually moving at light speed. It doesn't move anywhere near the speed of light. Matter of fact, lightning is 3,000 times slower than that. Lily Barrow's techniques could simply be referred to as light attacks due to the fact that they are luminous, and it doesn't mean that they're moving at light speed. This is the same argument used to debunk the Nagashionn. Some people argue that since it reflects off of something called a mirror sword, then that means it follows the properties of light, making it light speed. The reason why this isn't a good argument is that the sword isn't actually a mirror. It just functions to Lily Barrow's power, akin to the way light functions to a mirror, which is just to make it poetic in terms of naming and functionality. It's stated to confront his power and reflect it, and his power is stated to be the light of God, which I already established is just a similar thing to the Ceros, so I don't think this is enough to say that it's the speed of light. The last but not the least is the Ashwellia light used by Yhwach to steal and redistribute the powers of the Quincy's that he deems useless. It says that the target is engulfed in massive columns of light while his hands glow with light. Now people assert that this column moves at light speed because it's referred to as a ray of light, and people are able to dodge it, making them faster than light. But as I said earlier, similar to the Ceros and X-axis, just because something is called light or has properties of light doesn't mean that it moves at the actual speed of light. Actual light obviously does not steal and redistribute power. So if you're asserting asserting that it moves at the speed of light without any statement of the sort, then you would at least have to make sure that it doesn't contradict the behavior of light in any way. Otherwise, it cannot be asserted to be light speed. All of this is just special manipulation of spiritual energy. Like I said earlier, something can be described in a certain way based off of the way it looks. For example, lightning bolts can be called flashes of light because of the way they appear, but they're really just composed of electrons. Similar to the Nagashyan, it simply has luminous properties, which leads people to describe it as such due to the fact that it's luminous being its most striking and notable feature. Ichigo would scale to around planet level and massively hypersonic, and if you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to like and subscribe and share to your friends and turn on the notification button so you never miss an upload.